Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is going to be a really, really interesting session. This is going to be the mental health well-being at the workplace. I'm delighted to introduce Annette and Giselle Monbiot. I'm sorry, I'm useless at saying
Monbiot.
names. Thank you. Adult Education. That's going to be my next seminar, is how to pronounce people's names correctly. There's a massive conversations going on at the moment about how people are feeling during this lockdown period, and really what Annette and Giselle are going to really focus on is about sort of our approaches for getting back into the workplace and being compassionate to yourself, to your team, and just how you actually work. There's a lot of emotional triggers in a lot of these situations, and we've gone through this a couple of times together, and I think this is going to be a really valuable tool to actually just make you understand what it is that makes you respond in certain ways, and to create that degree of empathy going forward. So I'm delighted to have Annette and Giselle here. They will say a little bit more about what Kingston Adult Education do at the end, because there's a huge amount which goes on. They are a really there's a lot which you can kind of attend and go and learn and just help yourself. It's a great organisation. So I'll shut up now and I'll leave this to Annette and Giselle. Thank you, and speak to you soon. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye. Yeah, hi everyone. Hi. So I'm Giselle Monbiot. I am a Wellbeing Tutor at Kingston Adult Education. This is Annette Brown. She's the manager of the community learning team at Kingston Adult Education. And today we're going to present something just looking at the compassionate approach to encouraging a workforce back to work. Because when you could take something on from a compassionate approach, it means that everybody's needs are met. So Annette, would you like to just explain a little bit about the community learning team before we go on to the next part?
Thanks, Giselle. So about 5 years ago, we in community learning, which is part of a big educational establishment, got involved in a mental health project run by the Department of Education that looked to see whether education made any difference to people experiencing mental health issues. And not surprisingly, but by the end of the project, 61% of people who started off with clinical signs of stress or anxiety actually had significantly changed or improved their symptoms. So as a result of that, we actually have extended our program. And one of the things, we have great demand. We run a lot of courses, which we'll talk about later. But we know that actually mental health issues are on the increase. We don't know whether that's because people are more confident in disclosing it, or whether it is just because of the fact that, there's so many external pressures. But with COVID, we are aware that it is absolutely on the increase. And although it was bad for people at the beginning of lockdown, it is much more it's much more amplified now that we're coming to the end, because people don't actually know what they're supposed to be doing. So we do run a couple of courses. We run a lot of bespoke courses as well as public courses, but one of the courses that we run is called the Compassionate Manager. So Giselle is going to give you some tips, and I'm going to intervene every now and again about how you can encourage your workforce back to work. Thank you, Giselle.
Thanks, Annette. Okay, so just having a brief overview of what we are going to be covering over the next hour or so. So the aim of today is to guide you through the best approach you can take with your employees through this transition. So this isn't sort of an everyday situation that we're in at the moment. And in times of transition, there's always great feelings of anxiety and worry and concern and stress, both for you and for your employees. So initially, what I'm going to do is just take you through the importance of emotional awareness and well-being with your employees, for you to get an understanding of exactly what is going on on within you and within them. And I'm hoping for by the end of this, you'll realise this isn't just something to do now, but this is something for you to carry forward within your business model. I'm also going to give you a strategy to ensure both the needs of your employees and yours are met. You know, this isn't about just you and your business, and it's not just about the employees. This is about both of you being able to come together and ensuring that you're able to come to sort of an awareness and agreement between the two of you to ensure that you can all carry forward in the best possible way for all of you. And then what I will be doing is just talking you through the best way you can run these back to work conversations, because communication is so fundamental. And the trouble is with bad communication, it can create rumour, it can create resentment, it can increase anxiety. So if you are able to hold these conversations well, then it's going to make sure that the next steps are a lot more fluid for both you and your employees. So why is it important that we look at well-being? So in 2016 to 2017, there was a survey to show that 12.5 million working days were lost due to work-related stress, depression or anxiety. And they said in November 2018 that stress rises are becoming the most common causes of illness in the workplace. And the report recommended that employers need to take more responsibility to care for the health of their employees and try and support them to find ways to better physical and emotional health. Now that was in 2016, 2017, that survey was. So we can not only start to slightly imagine what it's going to be like at the end of this year and then following into the next year, because there's so much unknown and this is such an emotionally charged situation. And we have no idea how each individual is being affected by the current situation and also what's going to be happening in the future. And I think even it's just now people are starting to notice the feelings of stress and notice the feelings of anxiety. It wasn't just about the lockdown or the initial first wave. In fact, the more people I speak to, the more anxious they are becoming, because everything is so blurry now. And because it's stepping into this new way of life and no one knows where it's going to be taking us, none of us know, then we can only assume that these statistics are going to be so much greater for that level of stress. So this is why it's absolutely fundamental that you start this now and that you are able to ensure that you put well-being of your staff at a very high level. And later on, you will start to find out actually how you will benefit, how your business will benefit from doing it. You know, it's not just a luxury item, or it's not just a bit of self-indulgence. It is absolutely fundamental to the productivity of your company, and even more so today. So yeah, that just sort of consider what could happen. So I'm going to just talk you through this psychological model that I absolutely love, and most people who, once they hear it, they love it too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give a brief overview, and then we will go deeper into it in regards to this current situation, you know, of what we're talking about here, between that transition period for your employee and for you. So as you can see in front of you, we've got three circles, and these represent the different systems which enable us to regulate our emotions. Now, as you can see, we have arrows which are interacting between each system, and each system is at the same size as each other. We haven't got one that's bigger than another. There's not one that's more important than another. They are all feeding into each other, and they are all fundamental. Now, when these emotional regulation system is like this is when we feel energized, when we feel like we're working for our purpose, when we're motivated, when we feel happy, when we're able to sort of really manage our emotions and really regulate our responses. So, you know, being angry, being sad, being joyful, these are all emotions that we all experience. And they're all the right emotions. The trouble is, it's when one of these emotions becomes stronger than another emotion and we can't control them. This is when it becomes a problem. So I'm going to start with the red system, and that's the threat system. So this represents our most primitive an overriding response. So this is the one that overrides everything else that you can see in front of you. And the reason being that this is for our protection. It's this that keeps us alive. So if you think about it, it's of evolutionary. So, physically, we haven't changed. It's just our environment that's changed. Our body still responds in the same way today as it did thousands and thousands of years ago. So evolutionary, what this red system is about. So if you think about it, we were hunter-gatherers, and we were gathering nuts and seeds, and we were in our relaxed alert state. Our eyes are in the peripheral vision, which is meaning we're able to see a long distance around. At this point, you've got the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that's always looking out for threat. That is its purpose. And then the amygdala senses something over there in the distance. So it sets off the threat. The adrenaline gets flushed into the body. Your eyesight goes into tunnel vision, and it means you're then able to focus in on that thing. And let's say you see a tiger, and at that point you see a tiger, and it's a real threat. So more adrenaline gets flushed into the system. The blood goes away from the digestive system. Your heart starts beating more quickly. The blood goes into your arms and your legs. You're starting to breathe from your upper chest. What is happening is your body is preparing you to be able to either fight the tiger or to leg it, whatever it is that you're kind of deciding to do to ensure that you remain safe at that particular time. You're not there to problem solve. You're not there for your body to be nourished. You're not there to be able to regulate how you're feeling. You're there to react very quickly. And then what happens? Hopefully most people would run away from the tiger. You leg it from the tiger. You're safe. The threat goes. The fight-flight system relaxes, the adrenaline flushes away from the body, and then you go back into that relaxed state with your peripheral vision, and then your central nervous system relaxes. The emotions that are related to the threat system are anxiety, anger, and disgust. Now, the trouble that we have within modern society, and not even considering about COVID, is we have so many perceived threats: bad relationships, a high mortgage, worries about your job, the deadlines that you have to reach, children who refuse to get their shoes on when they're trying to leave the house on time. All of these things are perceived threats, and you're getting this flush of adrenaline. Now, the problem is, because we have these perceived threats wherever we go, we aren't coming out of that threat system. We are remaining in that threat system. So the long-term impacts of having that adrenaline flushing through our system is we start feeling more stressed, we start feeling more anxious. We might actually be becoming more irritable, frustrated, angry, explosive. It also becomes harder to concentrate. Our brain waves have become all incoherent. Add COVID into the situation. So this perceived threat, quite often when people are anxious, they see a threat out in the distance. But actually now we're being told, force-fed all the time, that we have a threat out in our society. We've got the virus and we don't want to catch it. So everywhere we go, we are being shown that. So it puts us more in this threat system. So what's happening? A lot of people who have never experienced anxiety before will be getting these feelings, and they're rising, and we're not getting a break from it. So then we get this extra pressure on our systems, which makes us more tired, which we'll look at a little bit later about the long-term implications of that. So moving on to the blue, and this is the drive system, and the focus of the reason why we have this is to ensure that we are achieving our goals. And when we achieve our goals, we get this lovely flash of dopamine, and dopamine feels good. So it motivates us to do it again. The reason for this is to evolution turn to ensure that we have a roof over our head, we have fire to cook our food with, we have meat to eat, we have a tribe that we belong in, because those that weren't in tribes, those who were on their own, would die. They just would not survive. So this is all about keeping us going. Dopamine can be quite addictive. So this is why often people might want to go for that next deal, the next deal. It's about that flush of dopamine that we get. What often happens within our society, especially as it's a very competitive society, is people get caught up in these two systems. So the threats, so you'll say for your drive system, you're always trying to achieve that next thing, get that next goal. You don't quite get it, so that that adrenaline comes kicking in, and then you get into that sense of anxiety because you're not achieving what it is you feel you need to be achieving. So these two can be a loop that people can be in for years and years and years, and it might not be until they've completely burnt out do they actually take a step back and have a look at that. Now, turning on to the green, and that is our soothing system. Now, this is the part which is often the part that's ignored, which people believe is self-indulgent, or we're selfish if we look at it. But as you can see, it's as important as the other two. So this is when we feel safe. This is when we feel cared for. This is when we feel trusted. And the chemical that we get when we're in our soothing system is oxytocin. And oxytocin actually heals our body from the damage that the stress from the threat system causes. So we need this oxytocin. It kind of balances out the damage from our red system. So it's fundamental. So how do you get that? So it can be hanging out with friends that you get and they get you, you know, that sense of belonging, that sense of contentment with each other, that feeling you get when you're stroking a dog. Oxytocin is known as the hormone of love. So it's that really lovely, good feeling factor. So self-care is absolutely fundamental. Now, in regards to the red system, how we think to ourselves is fundamental too, because our brain doesn't recognize the difference between what's coming from the outside of us or what's coming from the inside. So if I said to you, oh God, you're doing a really bad job, you should be doing better, come on, get better than what you're doing, or doing a rubbish job, you'd think, oh my God, I'm an awful person and I feel really attacked. But so many of us are thinking like that to ourselves, having these very negative thoughts, these unkind thoughts. And because our brain isn't recognizing that's coming from us, it will be putting you into that adrenalized state. So, and when we are looking into the future, worrying about what the future is going to bring, is putting us into the threat system. So this is why it's really important to be able to recognize how you need to bring yourself back into that soothing system quite easily. And a lot of that can be how you speak to yourself. In regards to the business and your business with the employee, if you can get an understanding of where the red is for you, and if you can get an understanding of where the red is for your employee, and then what you can do is you can come from that green zone. So in a sense, your employee could be, I'm not saying this is what it is, but they might be getting really worried about leaving the place where they have felt safe, which is their home. So whether they've been working from home and you're wanting to get them back into the workplace, or maybe they've been furloughed and now it's the time to get the discussion about how they're going to start working now. They will have that anxiety about leaving their green zone, which is their home, and moving out. So it's about recognizing that and working out how you can make their red reduce and how you can increase their green, increase their soothing system. For you, you might have the same concerns as well, because you have probably been at home and you might have to go back into the workplace as well. So you will have those emotions going on for yourself as well. But then also you've got the added threat about your business. You want your business to survive. You know, maybe your business has had to change through the lockdown. Maybe you've seen issues with your business, and you know, obviously you want that to survive. So once again, you've got to recognize how that impacts the red and the blue and the green. So it's just really good for you to be able to stop and have a think about how that system affects you.
Giselle, could I just interrupt? Yes. Giselle, sorry to interrupt. It appears that people can't see the slides, and I'm trying to work on it and ask Samantha. So I just wanted to check how to. So we were just trying to work on it in the background, but unsuccessfully. So I do apologise to everybody.
All right. Well, did that come clear about what that model looked like?
Yes, it did. And,
I can do a quick drawing if people would like me just to do.
I think the thing is of it. That obviously we are limited for time. So if we are not successful, then the slides, we can make sure that the slides are available for people. So, actually, somebody said that they can see this one. So it's so that's good.
So should I go back to the next one and see whether you can see it now? Can you see it now?
Hold on a minute. Oh, yes, she can see the slide now. So I don't know what happened. So something, I think Amanda must have done something in the background. So that's really good. So, yeah,
right,
people
okay,
can see it now.
See that? I'm going to just
Yeah.
keep that for a second. So you can see the red system, the threat system, the blue system, the green system.
Yeah.
Just checking, does everybody understand what I have just said? What's really helpful?
Yeah, everyone's saying, yeah, they can see it now.
And what's really helpful about this model is when we are feeling stressed and overwhelmed, and this might be something you could share with your employees as well, is once we start getting into that anxious state, our negative thought process can really take off. And it's that negative thought process is what keeps us in it. It keeps that function running. And also we can start thinking we should be better than this, we're failing, or we feel guilty, all these emotions. But if you're starting to feel this overwhelming sense of emotion, what you can at that point go, okay, just take a deep breath. What colour am I in at the moment? And you're probably going to be in the red. I mean, I'm not going to make an assumption, but that's generally where you are. And at that point, you can just think to yourself, which do I need to be, what would be most helpful for me? And at that point, it's normally get myself in the green, and you can start, and it's really good to start have a list in your brain or on your fridge or something of all those things which get you into that soothing system, which gets you, gets the anxiety to go. So that's what's really helpful. And it might be really helpful just to chat through with your employees this, because it just simplifies. And the thing about overwhelming emotion is you need to keep it simple, because the brain waves become all incoherent. And remember what I was saying, being in the threat system is not about being coherent or problem solving. It's about being alive.
Giselle, everybody can see it now, so that's great. Thank you. Sorry to disturb your flow, but it's important. Okay, thank you.
Excellent, because I don't have my chat on, because otherwise that would completely distract me. Excellent. So the signs and effects of stress, and I wanted to take this from the perspective of how this would affect you and your business. So professional relationships are going to be affected, whether it's because the person is more withdrawn or more snappy or distracted. It becomes more challenging to keep relationships unaffected. An increased lack of trust between individuals and teams, increased conflict, more focus on individual performance rather than looking at the teams or the organizational performance. People in authority might even seem like the attackers. So they might become more needy or dependent of those around them, or find it hard to respond in a professional manner. Another effect of stress is the reduction of energy. Once you're having all that adrenaline flushing through your system, it just starts taking a toll on the body. And this can have a big impact on all areas of life, and can result in cutting out activities that actually can help reduce stress, so like exercise, socializing, completing tasks that you need to be working on. It also reduces creativity, interest and motivation. Whether relating to work or personal life, this can have direct impact on productivity, reducing the purpose of activity and losing connection with the people around you, and reducing emotional well-being. It can also cause disorganization, and this means that effectiveness reduces greatly, and productivity and work-life balance and the general ability to prioritize and complete tasks can become really difficult. Compromised health, and this is what was found in that big survey that we talked about at the beginning. Compromised health leading to increase in sick days taken, increased adrenaline and cortisol being pumped out with compromised sleep patterns. The immune system weakens, leaving you vulnerable to viruses and infection. And long-term stress can result in increased blood pressure, diabetes and other illnesses. There can be less commitment, loyalty and enjoyment, because as stress builds up over time, life becomes overwhelming and it loses its enjoyment. The smallest challenge can be perceived as a huge, and the resilience reduces, which means the challenges others might see as exciting can become scary, intimidating, and too much hassle. And it can impact home life, not being able to switch off and be present to family and friends. And your personal relationships can become the metaphorical punch bag. So as they struggle to contain those uncomfortable emotions and feelings inside them. So you can really see why it is sort of fundamental to be able to deal with stress, because it just directly impacts someone's ability to work and to function. So I thought what would be really helpful is to introduce a couple of techniques to help you on your way, because the more calm you can be, the more your employees will be calm in relation to you. Anxiety breeds anxiety, it absolutely does. You've all been in a place, haven't you, where everyone's chilled out having a lovely time, and then someone comes in and like, ooh, they're all over the place. And then sort of gradually the feelings in the room start going up. So but it's just the same, you know, if you're able to emit calmness to somebody who is feeling anxious, then you can start relaxing them and enabling them to just get out of that threat system and be able to start thinking more reasonably. So, you know, when you're in the threat system, you are functioning from the inside, right inside your brain in the limbic system. That's your most primeval sort of pet part of your brain. And actually what you want to do is get this part of the brain working, your frontal lobe. This is where you have your emotional regulation system. Yeah, this is how you regulate your emotions. This is where you problem solve. This is when you're able to look through it. Now, anyone who's experiencing anxiety will automatically think worst case scenario. The mind goes off, and, oh, this is going to happen. What if that happens? And all of that, which then adds to the sense of anxiety. But it's really important to remember that at least 95% of what you worry about doesn't happen. Even more, if you think about all the time you spend worrying, actually such a small proportion of the worst case scenario happens. And actually, if it does, it's not normally as bad as you have made it out to be. This 3 possibilities exercise is fantastic. It takes you away from the catastrophizing. And what it does, it starts igniting this part of the brain. So when you are in your worst case scenario, so, you know, you might think, oh, doom and gloom, everything's going to fail, the whole thing's going to be awful. In any possible scenario, there are many, many different possible outcomes, many different possible outcomes. And your worst case scenario could very much be it. But there can be other options as well, and they're probably more like it. So when you start to feel what if, worst case scenario, at that point you go to yourself, all right then, yeah, maybe that is a possibility, but can I think of 3 other things, 3 other possible outcomes that this might occur? And just by starting to think about that and having that sense of curiosity, what happens, it starts igniting this part of the brain, and then you start thinking about different possible outcomes. And then what happens is you start becoming more creative, you start being able to think through it. So it's a really, really helpful little tip. And maybe you can use that with your employees if they are feeling particularly anxious about anything. Oh, wrong button, excuse me. So just taking a moment just to have a reflection about yourself. And I would like you just to have a think about what type of management style do you have? You know, if you're thinking about the fact that the importance of emotional being management for your employees, it's really important, it's fundamental that you understand what type of management style you have. Are you somebody who's sort of up and close with your employees? Are you someone who's more detached? Maybe thinking about the different relationships you have with each individual. You might find there are some individuals that you know more about. There might be some that you've been quite distant with. And this isn't about being critical or judgmental or anything like that, but the more you're able to think it through and have that awareness, the better the outcome from this will be. So just maybe after this, just writing some notes down for yourself. It's always be reflecting about how you are as a manager, and because this will help when you have the conversations. Hitting the wrong button. Okay, so we're just going to, so we've looked now at sort of why we have to look at the emotional side and what is so important. And now we're going to be looking at the strategy in which you're going to be taking. So just remembering that normally within the workplace, you know, you've got the boss, you've got the employees generally do what the boss says, and people kind of know where they are. Right now, that's not the case. You know, you've got the owner, you've got the employees, and everybody doesn't quite know where they stand. So It has to be some from you and it has to be some from them. But the only way that that can start merging is if you are able to talk things through and give your employees an opportunity to actually explain about what is going on for them, and you will get more information about what is going. You will get to know what's going on in their life more. So we suggest that you create a questionnaire that they fill in by themselves. You will send this to them prior to the conversation that you will be having, so they can have an idea about what questions you're going to be asking. You have an idea about what answers they're going to give. It gives them an opportunity to explore their thoughts and how they're feeling about everything that's going on. You know, that's really therapeutic in itself. And this is especially useful if you've got a more distant relationship with your employees. This is really, really helpful tool. And what you'll find is from the questionnaire, you'll get information. And then when you have the conversation, you'll be able to delve deeper. You know, conversations are layered. So, you know, you might, if you were just talking, how are you doing? Fine. You know, you might get that. But actually enabling them to think about what they're doing will really help. And what it also does is it gives you a structure to follow within your conversation. So Annette, you've actually experienced this firsthand, haven't you?
Yes, I have done. I've got about 16 in my team. And when we were asked to do this, I have to say I did sigh, because I felt that I had a reasonably good relationship with my all of my staff. But what it enabled me to do was, because those employees were able to reflect first, it gave them a little bit of time. Because if you ask your staff, how are you doing? Quite often they're going to say, I'm fine, I'm grand, it's okay. But actually what we really need to do is find out what really is going on. So it's really important that when people actually take the time to fill in the questionnaire, that you read the answers, so that it can help start that conversation going. And what I found out of experience is that it just, certain not silly little issues, but, you know, issues about even working from home, what they're doing, what they found difficult or whatever, has helped me try and help them and solve. You can't solve everything, but you can certainly address some of those issues. So I really feel that this is so important. It might seem arduous, but it's the only way. You've got to start somewhere. It's not going to solve everything, but it will certainly help. So please do think about that. And I know that Giselle's going to talk about the type of questions, but certainly investment. You may already consider that you've got a good relationship with your staff, but you can always improve it, especially at the moment.
And I think it would be really useful for the team as well to go through it, to actually have that time to think about what it is they need and how it's affecting them. You know, at the moment, life's just, it's just sort of this moving forward thing, and we're not really sure where we've been or where we're going. And I think a time for reflection is always very, very therapeutic.
And so, I would say, just to add, that actually once we get out of this situation, it's maybe a lesson in life for the future that you do this maybe on a regular basis, not every week, but maybe even once every 6 months or once every year, like you would do an annual appraisal, but actually to find out what's really going on.
Yeah, brilliant idea. So possible questions to use. Now, we know that every business is unique and all of your different individual circumstances will be very different. So, you know, some of you will be getting people away from working from home and getting into workplace. Some people just won't have been working for a while. So, you know, you have to tweak it to fit into your situation. But I've just tried to think of some generic questions to ask within the questionnaire. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how well are you coping? If you say to someone, are you feeling anxious? Most people will say no, because they don't want to admit that. So if you give someone a scale of 1 to 10, it just gives you a good idea. So if someone says 2 or 3, that's a real alarm bells. I think, do you know what? If someone says 10 out of 10, I would be alarmed about that as well. I'm not sure anyone is coping 110%. I think a lot of people will be doing all right. And not everyone's an anxious mess on the floor. But I think if someone has a 10, I would be suspicious about that too. I would say that's somebody who's trying to avoid expressing how they feel. How well do you feel this company has handled supporting you during this time? So it takes it away from you. You know, if you say, well, how well do you think I've been supporting you? That's a bit more of that makes it more personal. But if you ask about as the company, people will be more happy to talk about that. And I think it's really important at this point to allow people to get things off their chest. Don't take it personally. It's just about, you might hear you've done a brilliant job, which would be fantastic. But it's about getting rid of those festering thoughts, because that will just build into resentment. What's your biggest learning from this experience? An awful lot can be learned from that question. It'd be amazing what people come out with from that. What would you like to continue that was introduced during lockdown? Working has completely changed, and in many ways there's been some fantastic things which have been introduced. So maybe some people have really enjoyed the differences that you have suggested that they do, and maybe that's a good way for them to carry on for the unforeseeable future. And what's really important is to understand what the work challenges are and how that's impacting their work. If people got children at home, whether they're having to care for somebody, how many are in the home. So, some people might not be very happy at home. So I think it's really important that you have an understanding about what's going on for people. These are all individuals. You have to remember the people you are speaking to are individuals. They are people with lives. And the more you express that interest, the happier they'll become with you as well. I'm sure you're all doing this, but what's really important is you're getting your protocol together. Thinking back to that first model that I showed with the green, this protocol is all about ensuring people that going back to the workplace is going to be safe. It's not going into a red zone, it's going into a green. They have to know if they're coming out of their green zone, irrespective of what's going on in their homes, they will at least know what is happening. They have control over who comes in. They have control of the cleanliness. They have control over who goes in and out of the house. When they start coming back to work, a huge element of that control is going to go, and they're going to be feeling unsafe. That transitional period is going to be bringing up all sorts of emotions. It's going to be putting people into that hyper alert, which is the red. So this is really important to ensure they understand how they're going to be looked after, how they're going to be kept safe. Everybody needs to know what's the earliest date that you are thinking. Are you thinking about them coming back around about August time or September time? If that's the case, of course that's not set in stone, but they know what type of dates you're working towards, what safety procedures there are. But this also gives you an opportunity to let them know what the limitations are of your company as well. You're not going to be able to deep clean the workspace twice a day or whatever. So they have to recognise cleanliness is their responsibility. They have to recognise that they have to keep their hands clean. Are you going to provide sanitizer? Are they providing their own sanitizer? People just need to know that so they can be ready for that. And you also have to discuss about the commute, how they're getting into work, how are they going backwards and forwards, because ultimately that's their responsibility. And you need to know that your workplace is going to be kept safe. So it's about, if you've got more than one employee, you're responsible for all of them. But it's also recognising that they have to be responsible as well for everyone. So this is why this is so fundamentally important, to ensure that your needs are met and the business's needs are met, as well as the individuals. So I'm going to just teach you a lovely little breathing exercise, which I suggest you do before each conversation. But every time you start to feel that maybe you're getting a little bit in the red zone, then I suggest that maybe you do this. The reason why it works so well is it tricks the brain into believing that you're relaxed. And when your brain gets tricked into the fact it's being relaxed, it means the adrenaline comes out, you go out of the red zone. This goes into the green zone. When we are in an adrenalized state, we've got our adrenals, which are pumping out all that adrenaline, and they just get a bit knackered. And this actually is one of the things which relaxes your adrenals, and your adrenals need as much relaxing as they can. So it's called 7-11 breathing. It's not seconds, it's just the breath. And what's really helpful is if you're able to count whilst you're doing your breathing, it means that you're being distracted from that thought process which is going on, which is another thing that really helps. If you're able, whilst you're doing this, to put your eyes into that, sort of get that peripheral vision, so defocus your eyes, then what happens, it adds to the exercise. But if you prefer to keep your eyes closed, then that's all right. So what you do is you sit up in a straight position, and you breathe from your solar plexus, and you breathe in for the count 7, and then you exhale for the count of 11. And what's really important is the breathing out is longer than the breathing in, and the reason being is that is the relaxed state of the central nervous system, is the out breath. So the more you're able to have the exhalation longer than the inhalation, then that means you'll get more relaxed. If you can do this a few times during the day, if you do it sort of a couple of minutes and do it throughout the day, adrenaline is an accumulative within the body. So if you're able to do this at intervals throughout the day, what you can start to do is start flushing the system out. So you're breathing in for 7, exhaling for 11. Those slow, deep breaths. And you might find it easier to go, count in for 4 and exhale for 7, whatever, but it's just about getting that flow. I'm not sure we necessarily got time to practice that today, but I really recommend that you give that a try. So far we've looked at the why we need to the emotional part of it and the strategy, and now we're going to be moving on to the conversation and how that's going to work. So the whole idea behind this is to find out what's going on for the individual. So once you know what's going on for the individual, then they feel nicely looked after and you're concerned for them, and also it means that you have a good idea and there aren't too many hidden surprises. So it's really helpful to be able to go through the questionnaire, to go through question by question, but allowing it to be a flexible conversation. This isn't something that's rigid. This isn't something that, if you think about, if you do appraisals, how you have a very rigid agenda, you sit there with your computer on or your Chromebook on and you're sitting there and tapping away, and it's quite a distant situation. This is, if you remember, this is about the well-being, this is about the green, this is about enabling your employee to feel safe. So thinking about the calmer you are and the more focused you are, the safer they will feel. So do your breathing beforehand. Go through your worst case scenario and think about possible outcomes before. Get yourself ready for this. And then you can go through the questions in the answers in the questionnaire, maybe pulling out ones which you want to be a bit concerned about or you want further information, but making sure you're listening at all times. This isn't about trying to jump in. It's not about trying to think of clever answers or trying to fix them, because if you're trying to fix them, then you're not listening. And what's really important is that you're listening to them. And this gives your staff an opportunity to voice their concern and say how life is for them. And if they're sort of voice showing that they want solutions for their concerns, this is an opportunity for you to be able to work that out. And it's about letting them know that when they're in the workplace, that you'll be doing the best you can for them. So looking at the structure of the conversation, to thank them, I think it's really good to thank them for what they have done, whatever it is that they've done for you and your business, and then be open and listen to what the answers are. And the more focused you are, the better outcome will be for you and them. Good communication is so important. So give them the time, give them the space they need. Don't rush them, and don't try and fit too many into one day, or you'll run out of time. Or if you're trying to fit too many in a day, go, right, okay, I'm going to do 8 today, back to back. For one thing, you're going to just be thinking about the next person, and you won't be listening fully to what they're saying. And you really need to have that reflection time. You're nodding your head there, Annette. Do you have something to say about that? Or
yes, most definitely. I think that as much as you have to view it as, even though as a as something that's so important. If you fit too many in a day, you don't have that time for reflection on how you can best help your staff. So all of that work will go. We were told that it would take about half an hour per session, but it doesn't. It takes a bit longer, and you need just to be kind to yourself so that you've got time to just process those things. So certainly give yourself plenty of time to do that, so that that person that you're speaking to doesn't feel you're rushing them through and it's a tick box exercise. Because what does happen quite often, we know that we get tied up in tick box exercises. So you need to make sure that you are really paying particular attention to every single member of your staff, because they all matter. They really do.
And also, they'll be feeling a bit vulnerable in this situation. And because of that, they will be more hyper alert to your body language, more alert to what it is that how you're responding. And if you're trying to rush, or if they feel like it's a tick box, I always get that the wrong way around, exercise, then they will feel that, and they'll feel resentful of that. Just be conscious of that. This is as much for you as it is for them. So looking at effective questioning. So please try and use open questions. So closed questions are when they are, and people give a yes or no. You're not going to get much information out of those. So open questions are the ones which start with what, when, how, who, and where. Please avoid why. If you say, well, why do you feel like that? People are going to feel really attacked, and they go into defense, they go into the red. So just be very conscious about why, and please don't try and say can't as well, because that puts up barriers as well. So try and avoid that. And when you try and avoid it, that you'll hear yourself trying to say it, hear yourself saying it all the time, but just change it. If you start off with a why, it doesn't matter. Just recognize it and then ask the question. So some good questions, so as I was saying, it might depending on what these questions will change, but depending on your circumstances. But what do you find most challenging about this? We've already looked at sort of the outside challenges from work. You need to sort of go deeper into that. What challenges do you have home working? You need to look at the technical issues, the setup. What support do you need from the company to return back to work? And a really good question when they are sort of asking stuff is, tell me what I can do to make the situation better. Quite often people already know what they need. Or if someone is asking something really ridiculous, you're putting it over to them. Actually, it's a very empowering question, that. What can I do to make the situation better? Rather than you trying to fix them, they're going to tell you what they need. And that is a really, really helpful question. Oh, there we go. So staff well-being is key. So I said it earlier on, it's really important that you are able to keep this going. This isn't just about now, this is about going forward. And why? Why is that important? Well, it increases productivity and effectiveness, it improves health, it increases energy and motivation, it gives everyone better concentration, problem-solving abilities and efficiency, improves relationships, get better quality sleep. They'll be less reactive, and emotions will become more appropriate within the workplace. People become more efficient, less mistakes are made, less having to revisit and making it better. When people feel happier and more content, their well-being improves, their health will improve, increased trust and cooperation between your individuals and teams. And remembering that the power lies within you to change the way you respond to your world. So by being able to focus on the well-being of your staff, this is what happens. This is what will happen to your business. People will be so much more wanting to put more effort into the work that they're doing ultimately for your business. So just having a think as well for you is to have that self-reflection of, what can you learn from these past 4 or 5 months? What can you improve? What can you carry forward into your business? and ultimately recognise how important it is to build good relationships with your staff. And maybe if you're learning from this is your relationship with your staff isn't great, well, great. That's a brilliant learning that you're able to take forwards with you, and you can work out different ways in which you can improve that. So in summary, we've looked at sort of why this, the fact that this current situation is really emotionally led. So it's so important that you acknowledge it, you address it, and you give your staff the opportunity to discuss it. Create a questionnaire to learn what is going on for your staff and to structure the conversation. And then think about the conversations you're going to have. So you're going to listen and acknowledge to their own unique situation. And take with you that improved wellbeing increases productivity. So thank you for that. And we're just going to go over to Annette now, and she's just going to take you through some other information.
Thanks, Giselle. I hope you all found that really useful. That's a snippet of what we call a compassionate manager and many other courses that we can run. Just to let you know that we have many, many courses. These are just some of our courses that we run that anybody can access. But if you decided that you would like something for your staff, because what we know is this is kind of a one-way thing, and we can do some problem solving, or whatever, having groups where you can. One of the most important things that Giselle or any of our tutors can do is help you problem solve yourself. So those workshops work really well. So if you're interested, please do let us know. But as I say, you can join in any of our courses. My contact details are there at the bottom. So please take a photo and just let us know. We have got about 5 minutes or so for general questions, but if not, you can always contact us. But I just want to leave you with one thought. Giselle, could you move on to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
So I don't know whether you've heard of Viktor Frankl. We use him quite a lot in a lot of our courses, but he was a prisoner in the Second World War concentration camp. He later on became a psychologist and psychiatrist. But one of the quotes we like is that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, and that is the last of the human freedoms, which is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And as employers, that's up to us. As employees, it is, everybody has that choice. But I feel that if we are able to set some kind of example, it opens up those conversations and helps. And I think Giselle has already said this, but it's never too late to start developing relationships with your workforce, with your family. It's not just your workforce. If you know that you do need to improve that, then just start doing it and listen to what Giselle has said. As I say, join some of our courses. There's so much online as well, but please do think about it, because I think the one thing in lockdown that we've learnt really is there's a lot of compassion out there. We just didn't necessarily know it. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening. And if there's anything else that you need to know, you can put it in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just looking through some of these messages. We've got some lovely thanks here. I'm just going to read this out from somebody, and they've said that any workforce is likely to include both those who suffer mental ill health and those who care for them. We need to bear in mind that the latter are not immune to mental distress themselves. It's a really, really great point. Lockdown has increased stress and anxiety levels, so we anticipate greater need of support for many people. That there is this. This is from Mental Health Carers Forum. Please do contact them if you need any support, because it is really important. Carers have had the most tremendous job having to look after those, especially those who maybe have dementia and as you say, mental health issues. It's only going to have exacerbated. And whilst we actually are all dealing pretty well, sometimes it's so difficult. It's amplified in this situation. So,
and that's why it's so important to understand what each individual is dealing with. I mean, some people, you know, might have had a nice time at home. Other people, it might just be so hard and absolutely relentless, and they might be absolutely exhausted and severe things going on. And I think this, that is why it's so important. You can't assume what one person is experiencing at all.
And I think it's really hard as employers as well, because you have targets. You want to keep your business afloat. It's really important. So what I want you to take from this is that there's no criticism going on. It is about the fact that it's just helping you have a few tips and tricks to help you with your workforce. And one of the things that Giselle and I always say is that we often reflect and beat ourselves up about what we could have done better, but you need to be kind to yourself as well and say, oh, I did this well today. I did that well today. So do give yourself and treat yourself with some kindness too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's all about the green, and the green isn't just about your employees. Your green's not just about your business. The green is about you as well. And the kinder we are to ourselves, the more we're able to cope with the other stuff. And maybe it'd be helpful to have some signposting places. So if you do speak to someone and they are experiencing some intense mental health problems, or they are having to care for some very difficult situations, maybe it would be helpful to have some organisations that you can signpost them, because there are things that you're not going to be able to deal with, and you don't, that's not your responsibility to be able to signpost. But what's really important is, even after you've had the conversation, follow afterwards, follow through, ask, how's it going? How are you now? This isn't a one-off. Follow through. If they've got issues, how are you doing that? Is there anything else you need? What other support do you need right now?
And just to note that it might be that you haven't got the financial means to support your staff. Giselle, could you go back one slide? Because a lot of the courses that we have are funded. So for example, Practical Ideas for Happier Living is a 6-week resilience course. It's totally funded. So anybody can access that. There are so many of our wellbeing courses. There's actually an accredited course as well. If you felt that your staff wanted to achieve some kind of qualification, they can do that. We run a whole program that leads to a level 1 certificate. So there's an awful lot of things that you can just say, give this to your staff and say, why don't you contact Kingston Adult Education? And just to give everybody else a plug, we've got maths, English, all sorts of employability courses going on there as well. It wouldn't be fair not to say that. So but please do contact us, and if you've got any suggestions about problems that you may have, and you think that, gosh, we could do with support, we're very, very happy to help you. It's the most important thing. If your mental health is not right, and as Giselle said, then nothing's going to work. You've got to feel safe to be able to to increase your productivity, or to be productive in any way, really. So I think we're coming to the end of this, Giselle. We've got another 2 minutes. Is there anything else that you wanted to say just as we finish?
Well, to acknowledge how far you've come, and to take it each day as it comes, and practice that breathing. That breathing technique's amazing.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Where to stop there?
Shall I end it then, Annette?
I think so. Yeah. Thank you, Giselle. Thank you.